happened that for the first time all season with a right-handed pitcher on the mound, Max Kepler was not in the Philadelphia Phillies starting lineup. Rob Thomson made the call, and it does feel like we have hit the breaking point of the Max Kepler experience during his first year in Philadelphia. He was one of the prized acquisitions of the offseason with the hopes that he could serve as their everyday left fielder, but clearly that has not played itself out on the field. I want to break down exactly what this means for this Phillies team moving forward, why this is such important timing with the trade deadline right on the horizon here, and the overall what we can do with Max Kepler from here. Now, to dive into it and highlight why I think this is the breaking point, there are a couple stats that I did want to pull up here that the Good Fight tweets out. Max Kepler has been a failure of a signing, especially the last 3 weeks. That's since 6/18, he's played in 16 games with 53 at-bats, has slashed 170, 297, and 226. Has 1 home run, 5 RBIs, 56 WRC+. Why on earth does Topper still hit him 6th? And to extend that a little bit here, that if we want to go all the way back to May 1st, that shout out to Panasonic DX for 4500 here, who tweets out, remember back in April when Max Kepler got off to a slow start and people started saying, oh man, maybe this was a mistake. I don't know if he's going to work out. Turns out that was a high water mark. Since May 1st, he's batting 192 and has a 648 OPS. Now, to give him the full justice of the season overall, that he does have 10 home runs, 31 RBIs, a 307 on-base percentage there, 371 slugging percentage, 36 walks, and 57 hits across his 272 at-bats there, has also struck out 64 times there. At 32 years old, Max Kepler is exactly who he is at this stage of his game, and I think it was a miscalculation on the Phillies' standpoint to think a guy who basically had one breakout year where he did look like an all-star caliber left fielder, which was a couple seasons ago at this point, that I think the Philadelphia Phillies' perspective on things was if we bring him into a little bit more of a high-intensity environment where there is expectations, we may be able to get more out of him. That he kind of had just been sitting and chilling out there in Minnesota with the Twins where he was able to basically do what he wanted and there weren't these high-level expectations. That obviously has not translated here. Now, there's a lot to dive into with Max Kepler. I think he rubbed everyone the wrong way, me certainly, by basically speaking that he was frustrated by the lack of opportunity, that he was not the everyday left fielder. And I will note that from the Phillies' perspective here, there's been some bizarre terminology from this overall, that they've really refused to use the word platoon in regard to Max Kepler, that they basically exercise that has gone on a couple occasions between the media and Rob Thomson being like, so is it a platoon situation in left field? And Rob Thomson being like, no, I wouldn't say that Max Kepler is our guy there. They're like, but if it is a left-handed pitcher, you're probably not going to start him in left field, correct? And Rob's like, yeah, no, we won't do that from a matchup standpoint, but we're not calling it a platoon there, which is basically the definition of it. So I don't know if they're trying to protect his feelings or what the deal, but Rob Thomson was asked about this earlier this week, and I did want to highlight this quote here. And what Rob said was, quote, I think the comments that he made have been a little bit blown out of proportion. He told me what he was trying to say is that he likes to play every day, and it's frustrating when you don't. And I get it. I appreciate that. I'd rather have a guy who wants to play every day than not want to play every day. Same thing with Stott's comments as well. They're just expressing their feelings, and I get it. Rob Thomson on Max Kepler's comments on playing time. Now, I'll start by saying that the biggest thing that rubbed me the wrong way here is I do think Max Kepler has been given plenty of opportunities to prove why he deserves that everyday starting left field spot, and he has gotten plenty of chances here. He's 7th on the team in at-bats, or at least was when he first started complaining here. That is plenty of opportunity. That if you want that role, if you want to be considered and viewed in that light, then perform like it on the field, and that is where things have not come together here. Now, the bigger storyline here with Max Kepler underperforming is there is not quite that clear replacement in place here. To pull up the Phillies depth chart here, that you can see each of these guys that are looking at left field. Of course, Max Kepler, Otto Kemp, who's been given plenty of leash and for the most part has been a bright spot here. He's not exactly what I would consider like a game-changing talent for this season exactly here, but I do like what I see from him and do think he belongs at the major league level and on this Phillies team. Brandon Marsh, we know what the deal is with Brandon Marsh. He's been here for 3.5 years to this point, and I think him and Rojas are going to continue to platoon in center field until there's a better option. Kyle Schwarber, we obviously know all that he brings to the table from a bat perspective, but leaves plenty to be desired in the field. So that brings us to basically 2 outfield spots that you were covering up, as neither Brandon Marsh nor Johan Rojas in that center field combo are quite good enough to be a World Series threat the way this Phillies team commands and desires to be, and then Max Kepler not pulling up his weight in left field there. Now, to highlight what these guys bring to the table, I did want to put in perspective what Marsh and Rojas are producing this year. And to start with Marsh, that across his 197 at-bats, he has 3 home runs and 21 RBIs, has walked 23 times and 51 overall hits, has struck out 55 of those. And for Johan Rojas specifically this season, 1 home run and 15 RBIs across his 139 at-bats, has just 32 hits in that period, and has struck out 37 times. These are both guys that I think we kind of know exactly what the deal is at this stage of the game, for better or for worse there. It is crazy we're going to be doing this for the 3rd consecutive season of just hoping one of them can have enough of a pulse at the plate to prove to be effective there. And I was diving back in their past stats. For starters, I forgot Rojas hit 300 his first season in the majors here, and Brandon Marsh's his first season with the Phillies was terrific from a numbers standpoint. That if either one of those guys can return to that, then we're talking about something there. But I'm just not overly optimistic that is the case. And I'm even saying that after a relatively encouraging stretch from Brandon Marsh in particular here, that he's been seeing the ball very well at the plate, hitting, making contact. It's been a good Brandon Marsh stretch. So I don't want to diminish that by any means. But I bring all this up to say that I don't think it is coincidental that we're starting to see some of these changes at this stage of the season. We're past the midway point. We have reached the All-Star break here and the trade deadline right around the corner. Now, the one factor to keep in mind beside that is, of course, what's going on in the major leagues and or in the minor leagues. And what I mean by that is Justin Crawford in particular here. And Jeff Kerr of CBS tweets out that Justin Crawford is hitting .426 with a 1.086 OPS against left-handed pitching this season. Crawford is hitting .384 with runners in scoring position, which has obviously been a huge Achilles heel of this Phillies team, who have been really struggling to come up with the opportune hits and drive-in runs when they are positioned to. That is a tough battle to face as a baseball team, and there's some really bizarre numbers running around. We'll see how that settles. Maybe this is just a cold stretch, but certainly not something you want to see. But to bring this into Justin Crawford, I'm kind of surprised we haven't had any sort of rumblings or real momentum towards him getting an MLB opportunity. And my personal perspective on this is I just would have tried it to see exactly what you got. What if Justin Crawford is the missing piece, or could complete this outfield picture if this is how it fully comes together? Could he be that guy? I'm not confident that that is the case, but I'd rather find out and see if, like, can this guy be a contributor this year, or do we need to attack at the trade deadline, which is more so the conclusion that I do think we're falling on. And by the way, I do think I'd be remiss if I did not mention some of the, I guess, guys we let go that we probably should have thought a little bit deeper about. And at the top of the list right there, Cody Clemens, who has now pimped his 12th home run of the season. He will be tied with Nick Castellanos for second on the Phillies in home runs. And I will note the batting average not particularly strong for Cody Clemens. I believe he's hitting .208 right now, or right around there. But if it's coming with the additional pop, you can live with that and tolerate that a little bit more. We're kind of getting the worst of both worlds with Max Kepler, as the power numbers have not taken their strides forward, and the average certainly has not either. So the bottom line here is, I think the ultimate conclusion is the outfield position and just really set up as a whole is just not quite good enough for what this team aspires to be. And there are more question marks than just that. I know the bullpen, very clearly from the reports that are surfacing, does seem to be the priority for the way that they are attacking the trade deadline. But unless Max Kepler can find it within himself to turn things around and take his game up a couple notches, unless Brandon Marsh and Johan Rojas can consistently show a pulse at the plate in a way that can translate in a postseason setting, I'm a little skeptical of the outfield being good enough, and that could be a larger concern in my mind than the bullpen as a whole. This is not saying I'm confident in the bullpen or think it is good enough. I think you need to address both, but that is my message more so if you are prioritizing here. That I think you got to get both of these guys. I think you have to find a way to just not walk in with the outfield outlook that is currently the case with this Phillies organization. And Dave Dombrowski, this is your time to shine. So we'll see what happens with Max Kepler from here. I do expect that he will remain with the organization. I don't think they're going to trade him away, although I certainly would not be against that if the opportunity did present itself. But this was another opportunity where Dombrowski sort of dug in the bargain bin, wanted to take the swing, and it has not worked out in their favor. While you look like a genius when that works out and you do pull it off, sometimes it is best to just step up and pay the premium for a guy who you know exactly who he is. Max Kepler, not the guy that we hope for, and I think it is fair to assess that at this stage of the season. We will see what happens in the second half of the year and what they ultimately decide to do at the trade deadline. Still a lot to get into with this Phillies team, so we're going to be here from start to finish right here on Phillies Digest. So if you guys have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button on the channel. Drop your thoughts on this video here. Make sure you're hitting that like button, and I'll be back talking with you next time. Peace.